Today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian, and I'm streaming to you from Budapest here in Central Europe. I hope everybody has had a safe and productive week at home. Hi, Maksud. Hi, Awaz. Hi, Michael. Hi, Angelina. Nice to see a new member in the class as well. I hope you're all doing well. This is a members chat class. Of course, everybody is welcome to watch. To become a member, you can click the join button beside the subscribe button. If you don't see that, just send me an email. My email is adrian@aehelp.com. And Angelina, I see that you just upgraded your membership status to tier 2, the videos, the requests, and the exam. So Angelina, just send me an email after this class or later today to my email, and then I'll hook you up with those perks, okay? Cool. Happy to have you in the class. Hi, Abhishek. Hi, Lepush. Hi, Pavan. All right, students, this class is presented to you by AEhelp.com. For academic IELTS, please visit us there, join our premium package to get access to all of our products. And for the general version of the exam, check us out at gieltshelp.com. That's generalieltshelp.com. I'll quickly show you what those websites look like. This is the academic here with the blue background. Click that big red button to join there. And this is the general with the green background. Again, same idea. Click that big red button. We keep the general and the academic training separate. It makes sense. These are two versions of the exam, and people do these for different goals. So make sure you know which one you need and join the right program. Students, if you want to get our products, our exam books in paperback, hard copy, you can order the books from Amazon if you search for AEhelp's Academic IELTS or GEhelp's General IELTS on Amazon. So you can get the books from there if you don't want the digital, but you want the physical books. Okay, so today, task 1 writing. This task 1 was requested by Bekjan, and Bekjan, I'm happy you're in class right now, so you can chime in whenever you want, and this was requested by Bekjan. So again, members, you can request classes. All of the members' levels have that ability to request classes, okay? So this is a task 1 for the academic. And it's not for the general, okay? General IELTS, it's different. Task 1, you're doing letter writing, so make sure you know the difference, okay? Here we go. IELTS task 1 writing, you should spend about 20 minutes on this task. The following table shows the sales made by a coffee shop in an office building on a typical day. Okay, read the question carefully. So it's a coffee shop in an office building on a typical day. Okay, so it's not a specific date. It's just an average day. Describe the main features and make comparisons where relevant. All right. So let's take a look at this table. So this is a table type question. Let's see how well you can see this. It's maybe a little bit dark. If I have it, let's see. Let me just brighten it up a bit. Okay. All right. Can you see the numbers, students? I know it's a little bit hard to see this table. I'm trying to get it to be visible. Okay. Let me do this another way here. Yeah, this table is a little bit tricky to get visible. Okay, if you don't see it, that's fine. Just give me one moment. I'll see if I can make it work better for us. Here, just give me a second. Just 2 moments. I do have a brighter version of the table, but I'm afraid that's going to be maybe too bright. So let's check it out. Anyway. So let's insert that one. All right. Okay, so there's a brighter version of this. Now I bet you're going to tell me that's too bright. Okay, but you should be able to see it. All right, how's that version? Is that looking a little bit better? Let me try to find the happy middle ground. Always finding the solutions, students, always finding the solutions. You might not see me as well, but you'll see the table, okay? All right, Angelina, I will post it later into the community board as well, absolutely. So you'll see this question there as well, okay? All right, so here is the table, all right? And it looks kind of simple. So here you have the times in the day, 7:30 in the morning, of course, going up all the way till 5:30. And then here you have the products at the coffee shop. So you have coffee, tea, pastries, sandwiches. And then here you have the numbers. What do you think the numbers represent? It's clearly not dollars. It's not the money that they earn, but it's the number. Okay, so it means that they sold 265 cups of coffee during this time. All right, so these are the numbers. Okay, all right. So students, I'm going to show you how to write a really nice high band essay for this one. Okay, the first step, of course, is the overview. So for the overview, what you want to do is you want to paraphrase. The first step is just paraphrase the question with more details. Okay, yeah, it's quantity. Very good, Mohit. Bakjan, yeah, Elena, it's the quantity, it's the number. So if you don't see the dollar sign, then it's referring to the quantity. Very good. Okay, so go ahead, members, paraphrase this and use the information in the table to give more details. So the following table shows the sales made by a coffee shop in an office building on a typical day. Describe the main features. So paraphrase it, give it more details. I'm going to do the same. Here's another look at this table. Okay, coffee, tea, pastries, sandwiches. Okay. So okay, so there's my paraphrase. Let's see what you come up with. Okay, let's see what you come up with. Tito says, the given counter depicts the auction built by a coffee in a coffee office building on a common day. Tito, you're using synonyms, but you're not using them accurately in context. So students, be really careful when you paraphrase and use synonyms. You're using synonyms that you know work in that context, okay? Tito, that's kind of awkward. It's hard to understand what you're actually writing, even though you're using synonyms, because we wouldn't use most of those words, like auction built, doesn't really make sense, okay? The given counter's a little bit weird for this. I would just keep using table, okay? So careful with word choice, students. That's a very common mistake, okay? And it's very awkward in comprehension. Awaz says the given table depicts the trade caused by a coffee, tea, pastry, and sandwich store in an office building on a common day in different times. Same thing, Awaz, as with Tito. There's some really awkward use of words there. So be careful. Bekjan says this table illustrates, or the provided table illustrates, 4 types of products: coffee, tea, pastries, and sandwiches served in an office building on a typical day. Okay, Bekjan, that's much, much better. The comma, it's right after the last letter, sandwiches. There's no space, okay? Just after. Charlie says the presented table gives the number of coffee, tea, pastries, and sandwiches sold in a coffee shop in an office building in a day. Not bad, Charlie. Students, you need to use the passive voice here, sold. It's sold by the employees or the cashiers or by the coffee shop. So use the passive voice in this sentence. Okay. Does that make sense, hopefully? No, Pavan, you do not need to use capital letters for coffee, tea, pastries, and sandwiches. You can use lowercase letters. They're just common nouns, so you do not need to use capital letters. If you do, it's okay because it's the title of those columns, but you don't have to, okay? Abhishek says the table compares the sales of given products, namely coffee, tea, pastries, and sandwiches, at a coffee shop during the given time periods. Okay. Maksud says the table depicts the conventional weekday sales of coffee, tea, pastries, and sandwiches of a coffee shop which is located in an office building. Maksud, that is really nice paraphrasing. So far, Maksud has the highest band start to the overview. One correction, Maksud, you don't need the brackets around coffee to sandwiches, okay? Students, careful with that. So this is just a tip here. Don't overuse brackets. We don't use these so often in writing, okay? So there's kind of a very special way to use parentheses or brackets. So here's a tip. Okay, do not overuse brackets, which are these symbols, okay, in your task 1 writing. All you usually need, I see this often with students, and you usually don't need that. All you usually need is a comma or 2. Okay, so you just need to use the comma, all right, in this case. Okay, so don't overuse those brackets. Okay, so Angelina says the given data depicts the main products sold in a coffee shop during a regular day. Angelina, it's good paraphrasing, but you're missing details. So notice, Angelina, how Maksud and the other students are putting in some details into that paraphrase. So to get a better band score, Angelina, don't just simply paraphrase the question, but give it some detail that you can see from the graph or the table. So here is my paraphrase with details. The given table depicts the sales of 4 products, coffee, tea, pastries, and sandwiches at a coffee shop during 4 time frames: breakfast, lunch, dinner, and supper on a usual day. Okay, so that's what we have. Now, if you look at the times here, students, you can see that this is kind of breakfast time. This is more or less lunch time. This is more or less dinner time. And this is supper time, okay? So especially in Western culture, that's kind of how it works. So if you can use those words, then again, you're going to get a better band score because you're changing data into more human language. Again, it's an expository essay, so you're explaining the information, not just simply describing or reporting that. Is that clear, students? So does that make sense? Okay. So always try to take the information that you see and translate it. Don't be too creative, so don't make up information that you can't see. But when you realize, oh, okay, that's breakfast, that's lunch, that's dinner, that's supper, that makes sense. Okay. Elena, supper would be a late dinner. Okay. So if you think about it, it comes after dinner. Okay. So dinner comes after lunch, supper comes after dinner. Okay. All right. Okay, I'm just going to read the other ones here. I can't read all of them, students, for every sentence, otherwise we'll never get through it. But Roshni says, the given table illustrates data about the sales of coffee, tea, pastries, and sandwiches in an office cafeteria on a particular day. Yeah, you don't need the coffee shop on it, Roshni. That's redundant. Okay. Kazim says, the given scheme below demonstrates the sales in a coffee shop in an office building. Kazim, add more detail. Same thing, okay? Elena, yours looks good. I just read that as well. Okay, so we're not done yet. The overview has two components. The second component of the overview is the main feature or features, okay? So now we need to add that sentence into the overview. This is not separate from the introduction. So the introduction and the overview are the same paragraph. Please don't separate these. It looks really awkward, okay? So I know you see these examples online and you hear it from people, but it's unnecessary, okay? The introduction, meaning the paraphrase with the details, and the main features, that should just be one paragraph. It makes sense to group that into one nice introductory overview, okay? So here, now we want to write the most observable feature, so what we can most clearly see from this table. So what can we see here? What's the most observable? What can we identify right away by looking at this table? Okay, there's a couple of interesting pieces of information. All right. So Michael Fan says, when looking at this table in more detail, it's obvious that the sales of coffee, tea, and pastries dominated during breakfast time. Abhishek says, overall, the maximum sales of coffee can be seen in all 4 time frames, followed by pastries. Okay. All right, Abhishek, you mean that the coffee sales had the highest amount of sales, right? Awaz says, overall, it's obvious that pastries were the most sellable product, while the least was tea. Okay. Beckjohn says, at first glance, it is evident that the most number of commodities are served in the morning, with the exception of sandwiches. Okay. All right. So what you're doing, and what's interesting here, is some of you are reporting on the type of product, and some of you are reporting on the actual time. Okay. So how do we get this? And this is what you need to do with tables. Students, if you get tables like this, then you should do some quick, simple math. All right. So you can look at these numbers here. These are the columns. Okay. And you can also look at these numbers here. These are the rows. All right. Now, sometimes for task 1 in the academic IELTS, you get a very complicated graph. You get a line graph together with a table, or you get 2 bar graphs together, or 2 maps. So it's quite complicated. So you have to be careful to simplify, take out the most important information. Sometimes in task 1, you'll get a simpler graph like this table. So you have to look at the information in a more global and detailed way to get some better ideas. Now, if I look at this table and I look at the row, then I can say that the breakfast time had the highest number of sales and coffee was the most sold item throughout the day. Okay. Now, here's an interesting phrase that you can use, and we'll do this in the analysis actually, so I'm going to leave it till that. But you can look at the columns and you can look at the rows. So you can look at the objects and you can look at the times. So my main feature would be that, okay? That's my most observable. So I can see that coffee's definitely the most sold item and the morning time has the highest sales. For the lowest sales, it's a little bit difficult to see. It looks like tea, but I'm going to leave that out. And the time is even more difficult to see. Okay? So my main feature is this, at first glance. And when you say at first glance, it really should be at first glance. At first glance, it is apparent that coffee had the highest number of sales throughout the day, and the morning time had the most sales in the day. Okay? So that would be my observation. All right? If somebody had something similar to that, great. Okay? So the given table, so this is my overview. Go with me. The given table depicts the sales of 4 products, coffee, tea, pastries, and sandwiches at a coffee shop during 4 time frames, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and supper on a usual day. At first glance, it is apparent that coffee had the highest number of sales throughout the day, and the morning time had the most sales in the day. Okay? So that's what it looks like. Charlie Sen says, should I write in the present tense or past tense? That's a really good question. So you can choose either or here, Charlie, because these are the sales on a given day, on an average day. So this day seems like it happened. So you could use the past tense, but you could use the present tense because it is general. Okay? So you could say it like this, Charlie, and that was a good question. And I think, yeah, Charlie, I would say that using the present tense might even be better. I don't think you'll lose band scores for that, using the past or the present in this case, but general does sound better because the question says on a usual day, so it's general, and the present tense is used for general. Okay, so at first glance, it is apparent that coffee has the highest number of sales throughout the day, and the morning time has the most sales, okay, in the day. All right, good. That was a good catch, Charlie. Good for you. Okay. All right, so now we do the analysis. And for the analysis, we want to identify 6 to 8 points, okay, before we begin writing. So here, if you were to get this question, your point number 1 should be this here. So what you want to do is you want to do some quick math. All right. Now, your math does not have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be accurate. This is not a math test. It just has to be roughly accurate. So 200, 265, 145, 185, what is that? So that's about 400, right? That's about 400 as well, roughly. So it's roughly 800, right? And I think Pooja said that. I caught that number, 800. It's very close. Abhishek says it's 795. That's good. So T, so I want to quickly do some summation here. And yes, for Band 9, Band 8 level students, you're expected to think at this level during the academic IELTS exam, okay? So T, we have roughly 200 and another 85. So we have roughly about 275 here, roughly, okay? Pastries, we have 100, 250, plus 275 is, let's say, 525, plus 80 is 605, roughly 600, right? And then sandwiches, help me out here if you can see them. I see some numbers coming up. So if you can see them here, okay. So here we have exactly 400, right? Okay, 90, 200, 400. And when you have a table like this in the IELTS, you'll see that the numbers are relatively easy to sum together. So again, IELTS is testing your ability to add like this, right? Okay, so 40 plus 50 is 90, plus 110 is 200, plus 200 is 400. So quick numbers, right? Dr. Krishna, Michael Fan, Maksud, Abhishek, very good, right? So quick numbers. So that's what we do. And now we can actually see some very interesting information here that's much more interesting than just looking at these little numbers here. We can see that coffee, there were twice as many cups of coffee sold as sandwiches, right, in the total day. And there were roughly 3 times as many cups of coffee sold as tea. Okay, pastries outsold sandwiches by 50%. So we start to see a lot of really interesting information come out of this table now. Okay, so now we want to see the same for breakfast, lunch, dinner. So we can compare the items, and then we can compare the actual times of the day as well, so summing the rows, okay? So morning time, okay, here we go. So 265, 275, roughly 550, 600, 710. So 710 items total for breakfast, right? Coming up for lunch, we have 300 plus another roughly, let's say, 250. So we have about 530 roughly. Okay, and here's where you can use words like approximately, about, roughly, so on. Okay, so these words will help you. So 530. Let me put these in this place here. Okay, 710. All right, anybody figure out the last two for me while I was speaking here? Okay, so again, 300, 300 plus 75, 375. Okay, and last but not least here, 200, 400, about 470. Okay, so now we see that dinner time actually had the lowest sales, right? And the highest sales were in during breakfast time, and lunch and dinner roughly had the same. Okay, so now we have some interesting numbers there. All right, so that's some interesting data. So now we can go into more details about the main feature of the overview. We can compare the highest and lowest sales for items, right? So what I would do now is I would compare this as my number 1 to this. Okay, so that would be my number 1. My number 2 point would be maybe comparing this to this. My number 3 point would be stating maybe this time here, sticking with times. Okay. Actually, I might save that until I finish comparing items. So, sorry. My bad. Just a second. So, I would compare this to this for number 1. Then number 2, I would do these here. Okay, let me explain that a little bit more clearly. So my first point for analysis, I would just compare items. So coffees were sold the most on a typical day. Tea was sold the least by about 1/3 as much. And then for my second point, I would name that pastries were the second most popular and sandwiches were in at 400. And then I would go to the times. So I would go to most and least, 3 here, and then comparing it to the lowest sales here, and then fourth would be this one here. And then if I want to go into even more details and I have more time, then I can go into specific times and items. So I could go into coffee in the morning being the most popular item, and then tea during dinner time being the least popular item. Okay? All of the other pieces of data I would ignore. Does that make sense? Hey, Sammy. Welcome aboard. So does that make sense? So that would be, I'm showing you band 9 here, so keep that in mind. So first I would identify the sales of coffee as the most at the place and on a given day, the sales of tea as the least, then third and fourth pastry sandwiches, or second and third, and then the times of the day popularity, and then maybe if I have enough time, these here. Okay, does that make sense, students? Those analysis? Now I hope somebody is keeping track of these numbers because I'm going to have to kind of erase these. Okay, Begjan Abhishek says yes. Okay, so that's the most valuable information. If we're, think about it this way, students, if we own this coffee shop, this is what we would want to learn from this table, right? That's a good way to think about these graphs is who is using this information and what do they want to know? So if I ask who is using this information, then I would say, okay, the owner of the coffee shop. And what do they want to know? Well, they probably want to know their average total sales of each of these products. They want to know their busiest times in the day or their highest selling times in the day. And then in more detail, they might want to know what's really working well for them and what's not working so well so that they can make better decisions. Okay. All right. So I'm going to start writing these together with you, and I'm going to teach you a couple of really cool phrases so that you can get these nice high band scores if you get a table question like this, and of course use it for your university studies also. Okay, here we go, students. So let's get into the analysis. The first one is comparing total sales of coffee to total sales of tea. Okay, so that's what we're doing now. All right, so analysis point number 1. Now, this is how I would start. By summing the number of sales in each row and column, further insight can be gained from this data. The total number of coffee sales on an average day hovers around 800, which is the greatest of all 4 products. Conversely, the lowest totaling sales of any product is tea at just a third of coffee, around 275 units. Okay, so that would be your band 9 description. Okay, now notice this very interesting language here that you can use for this. Okay, so by summing, or the other way you can say it is by adding. Okay, so by summing the number of sales in each row and column, further insight can be gained from this data. If you have a nice sentence like that in your analysis, I promise you that your examiner will be going, aha, now there's a band 9 student that I've been looking for all day. Okay, so everybody picking that up, making a note of that statement by summing together, by adding together the rows and the columns. Please make sure you note that in your study book, okay? Preeti says, to begin, coffee sold the highest quantity, roughly 800 throughout the day, whereas pastries are second in sales. Moreover, teas show the lowest interest by individuals compared to coffee and pastries. Not bad, Preeti. There's a couple of slight errors there that are a little bit confusing, but overall it's not bad. Beckjan says, going into more detail, it is evident that coffee had the most sales with about 800 cups compared to tea, which was sold at approximately 300 units. Nice, Beckjan. Very good. Okay, comparing that tea and coffee. Now, Beckjan, make sure that you mention that tea is the least. Okay. Awaz says, looking at the table in more detail, coffee was the most sellable product. Yeah, and we can stick to, so Charlie Sen says, hey, let's, guys, girls, this is an average day, so let's stick to present tense. Okay. Yeah, so I'm staying with present tense here as well. I'm just checking to make sure if we're following Charlie's good advice here. That was sound advice. Use the present tense. It's not a past day. It's not a past year. It's just a general day. So let's keep using that present tense in this case. Okay. All right. Roshni says, as stated on a typical day, coffee is sold markedly higher in total at 800 cups compared to tea, which is the lowest total sales at merely 275 cups. Right, Roshni? Roshni, one sentence. Don't split those. Angelina, people are more into coffee. According to the data, around 800 units are sold per day, closely followed by pastries, which summed around 605 units during the day. Then followed by, and finally, least is tea. So, Angelina, I would just roll the rest of that in there. So I would roll sandwiches and tea in with that sentence. Might as well, if you're going most, second, third, least. It's okay to do that. You don't have to go most and least. You can go first, second, third, fourth. Just do it all in one sentence in that case. Okay, Angelina, just keep going with the other two products. Elena says, after adding up the rows and columns, okay, so Elena, put that information in there. After adding up the rows and columns, it's easily visible that coffee is the most sold product. In that case, use the past participle because it's passive. The most sold product with roughly 800 cups for a normal day, whereas tea is the least sold product among all four, which is just a third of coffee, around 275. Okay. All right. Not bad. Not bad. Slow down, students. Slow down. I see some of you already going towards the times and so on. Okay, so here we go. Let me finish up the other two products here. The second most popular product on a typical day are pastries at 600 units, and in third place are sandwiches at about, what is it? Sandwiches at about 400 pieces. Okay. All right, good. So now we're looking at the times, okay? And make sure you don't confuse these. So we got this information by summing together the columns. Now we're looking at the information by summing together the rows, okay? And here is where you can use the connective word furthermore. Furthermore, because you're giving more information. In addition is okay here too. I would prefer furthermore. Okay. Yeah, Roshni, you don't need a full stop there in that previous, okay? Okay, Beckjohn says, furthermore, pastries, which was the second highest sale, has 605 units, while the number of sandwiches is sold at 400. Okay? Yeah. All right, Beckjohn, that's good. Again, present tense when possible, unless you're using passive voice, students. Okay? Now we're comparing times. So I'm going to compare most with least. Just because most and least, it's a nice comparison for this kind of a table. Okay, so I'm comparing breakfast, 710, to dinner time, 375, which is roughly half. Okay, so I'm going to get into that. Okay, furthermore, by adding together the columns, it can be learned that, so here learned because I'm using the passive voice, right? It can be learned that the highest sales are for breakfast at roughly 710 items total, while the lowest sales are during lunch at about half of breakfast, just 200 and, or what is it? 375? Yeah, 375. At just 375 pieces total. Okay? So that would be comparing breakfast and dinner. Okay? Sorry, not lunch, dinner. I'm sure somebody's, hey, Adrian, it's dinner. It's not lunch, during dinner. All right. Let's see. Did anybody else have something similar? So Pooja says, moreover, pastries were preferred over sandwiches, proving to be the next most popular item on the menu with sales figures of about 605 per day. Pooja, that's really nice writing. I love that comparison. Okay, really nice. Charlie Sen, same idea. Very good. Elena, in addition, pastries is the second most popular product, which is just 200 quantities less than coffee, followed by sandwiches in third place with roughly sandwiches 400 pieces, Elena. Okay. Dr. Krishna says, furthermore, focusing on time slots, individuals prefer to buy breakfast over dinner, which are 710 items and 375 items accordingly. Yeah, the number, Dr. Krishna, is the adjective, so you need the noun. Okay, units, items, food items. So you need a little bit more there. Okay. Abhishek, additionally, the total number of rows, including coffee, tea, pastries, and sandwiches, are around 710 units for breakfast, while the lowest sales are during dinner time with just 375 pieces total. Abhishek, that's good. I made a few corrections there. Okay. And then here I have 530 and 470 for lunch and supper. Okay, so 530, 470. Those are roughly the same because it's a typical day. On another day, they could be even closer. All right, so I'm just going to summarize those. In my next sentence. And I probably have easily 150 words already, so I might not focus on going into details about coffee and during breakfast time and tea during dinner time. But, you know, if you're really fast, you can go there. I don't recommend it. I think if you have 150 words at this point, you might as well just write a summary. Okay, so here, before I do that, the second most popular time in the day was lunch at 530 units sold, and a close third was dinner at 470 items purchased. Let's paraphrase here a little bit. All right. Now, again, if I'm really pushing, I'm fast, and I have plenty time, maybe I'll write about coffee in the morning and tea, but it's kind of detailed. I don't really need it. Instead, I'd probably want to write a summary. Okay, Roshni's asking, sir, is passive voice being verb plus by? Roshni, passive voice uses be plus past participle, and you use by to represent the agent of the action. Okay. Send me an email on that, Roshni, and I can send you a little bit more detailed information if you're not clear on passive voice. Okay, so summary. I know a lot of you have heard that, oh, you don't need a summary or a conclusion for task one. Yeah, you don't need anything for task one, but the question is, what should you write to get a high band score? And if you can see some interesting information that you can summarize from the graph or the table, and it's not a conclusion, okay? A conclusion and a summary are not the same, okay? They both come at the end of the writing, but they're not the same idea, okay? We use a summary for descriptive and expository writing, and we use a conclusion for persuasive and narrative writing. Okay, is everybody clear on that? I'm going to say that one more time for all of those people who love literature and love writing and communication. It's a good point to remember for the future. Okay, I'll write it down for you here. So keep this in mind. I don't think I've said this to you in the past. Okay, so tip, remember that a conclusion and summary are not the same idea. Okay? Summary, or a summary, is used for expository and descriptive writing or essays, whereas a conclusion is written for persuasive and narrative essays. Okay? So make sure to remember that. All right? Abhishek, if you don't have time to write the summary, don't worry about it. You can still get a pretty good mark. Okay? But for those of you who really do need that Band 8 for like a PhD or some kind of really fast-track visa or something like that, you should consider writing a summary for task 1. Okay? So conclusion is for task 2, summary is for task 1. Okay? And the summary is just a simple summary of what we learn from this table. Okay? So summary. In summary, what do we learn from the table? Now, here's where you can get really clever, right? Coffee, beverage. Tea, beverage. Pastry, food. Sandwich, food. Which is the most popular food? Pastry. Which is the most popular beverage? Coffee. What do we learn in summary? The most popular beverage is coffee over tea, and the most popular food is pastry over sandwich, right? I think it's a clever summary to say that, and I bet you if you write that for this question in the real IELTS, you'll get some more band points. Promise you. Okay? So in summary, after analyzing all the data, it is clear that coffee is a much more popular beverage than tea at this shop, while pastries are 50% more popular, are a 50% more popular food item than sandwiches. Okay? So that would be your Band 9 analysis, summary, and overview. Here we go, students. Let's read through this together. So the given table depicts the sales of 4 products, coffee, tea, pastries, and sandwiches at a coffee shop during 4 time frames, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and supper on a usual day. At first glance, it is apparent that coffee has the highest number of sales throughout the day, and the morning time has the most sales in the day. By summing the number of sales in each row and column, further insights can be gained from this data. The total number of coffee sales on an average day hovers around 800, which is the greatest of all for 4 products. Conversely, the lowest totaling sales of any product is tea at just a third of coffee, around 275 units. The second most popular product on a typical day are pastries at 600 units, and in third place are sandwiches at about 400 pieces. Furthermore, by adding together the columns, it can be learned that the highest sales are for breakfast at roughly 710 items total, while the lowest sales are during dinner at about half of breakfast, just 375 pieces total. The second most popular time in the day was lunch at 530 units sold, and a close third was dinner at 470 items purchased. In summary, after analyzing the data, it is clear that coffee is a much more popular beverage than tea at this shop, while pastries are 50% more a 50% more popular food item than sandwiches. Okay. Pooja is asking, can we use preferred instead of popular? Yeah, you can, Pooja. Preferred, popular, yeah, same idea. Okay. Elena, very good. It's the same. So Elena says, in summary, the most popular beverage is coffee over tea, whereas most preferred food is pastry to sandwiches. All right. So a couple of important points, students, for these kinds of tables. Don't be shy, especially if the numbers are really easy. Sum them. It's not a math test, so you don't have to have perfect numbers. So don't stand there like, drawing up your equations, but just a rough addition of rows and columns, okay? Compare the obvious. Your analysis matters a lot for those high band scores, okay? Bekjan, thank you for this request. It was Bekjan's request. Elena sent me some more Task 1 requests for next week, so that's fantastic, Elena. We'll cover one of those in class for sure. As I mentioned to you, I have seen those in the past. Thank you, Angelina, for joining. Make sure to send me an email so I can hook you up with your perks later today, okay? And for all of our viewers to get access to all of our products, videos, interactive courses, applications, and so on, just join us for academic IELTS at AEhelp.com and GIELTShelp.com for general, okay? Mohit, we wrote 3 paragraphs because the overview and the introduction are just one paragraph. You don't need to separate those, okay? That's unnecessary. Preeti, you're very, very welcome. Dr. Krishna, thank you for joining in today. That was awesome. Hopefully I'll see everybody in 30 minutes for speaking part 2. So that will be an all chat class. Everybody can join the chat. Speaking part 2. Stay safe, stay healthy. Much love to all of you from Budapest. Bye for now. See you soon.